There are two types of squash players. Those who take the serve seriously, knowing that it can provide a significant advantage in every time that they serve. Notice the pause. And there are those that serve because, well, that's just how you start the game, right? So my objective for this video is clear: to help you become the first type of player. Because irrespective of your level, a great serve can make a huge difference to your game. And to do that, I'm going to talk about the rules. It's important for you to know them. Then I'm going to dispel some misconceptions about them that I've heard over the years. Next, I'm going to talk about your position and movement, especially from the right-hand side for right-handed players and left-handed side for left-handed players. I'm going to talk about the difference between a forehanded serve and a backhanded serve, again, especially from the right side for right-handed players and left side for left-handed players. Then I'm going to tell you about the 93% rule and why it's so important. After that, I'm going to talk about some tricks and tips that will help you get the most out of your serve. And finally, I'm going to talk about how you can practice them, because you really do have to practice them. So, let's get started. Okay, so let's start with the front wall. The ball must hit the front wall first. It cannot hit any other wall first. It can hit afterwards, but it cannot hit first. This is called the service line. It must hit above this line. Some people call it the cut line. If it hits this, it's considered out. And this is the out line. If it hits this, it's out as well. So let's now move on to the floor lines. This is called the short line. This is called the half court line. Now, after a serve has hit the front wall, if it is not volleyed, we'll talk about that in a moment, it must bounce in this quarter. It cannot bounce here, okay? It cannot bounce here. It cannot bounce on any of these two lines. It can bounce on those two lines. Those lines are for the server, not for the returner. It must bounce here if it's not volleyed. Now, it doesn't matter if it hits the side wall and then bounces. It doesn't matter if it hits the back wall and then bounces, but it must bounce. Let's talk about the service box, which is this. When you serve, you must have at least 1 foot touching inside, not touching the line, not above the line, not above the square, touching. Now, you can stand wherever you want. Okay, this is not an effective way of serving, but it's legal as far as the rules are concerned. You could stand here. Now, we will talk about serving position, but effectively, you want your foot as close to this line as possible when you make contact with the ball. Your feet can be anywhere they want to be until the point of contact, and at that moment, that is when your foot must be touching inside the box. And in squash, there are far too many foot faults. A foot fault would be that, touching the line. And a foot fault would be that, a little bit of ballet when you serve, or even that. Must be touching, 1 foot must be touching at least in the box. Both feet can be, but why would you do that? Only one is needed. Okay, so let's look at some examples. Here's me in slow motion, and in this particular serve, it is a legal serve. The moment I make contact, my foot is still touching the box. And now in this one, my foot is actually just above the ground as I make contact. That would be really hard to spot in a real match. The misconceptions. Now, over the 40 years that I've been coaching, I've heard a lot of different misconceptions with serve and other things, but I'm going to talk about 3 common misconceptions to do with the serve. And the first one is to do with volleying the ball when it looks like it's going out or when it is going out. So imagine a server hits a beautiful, or what looks like a beautiful serve, and I come along and it was definitely going out, but I volley it and I aim for a cross-court nick and I hit the tin. I've heard people say, it was going out, I get the point anyway. or the ball is hit very softly, I hit it before it would get here, or the ball is going out the back, I hit it, or less common, the ball is going down the middle and I hit it. All of those shots would go out, all of those serves would go out, and the return of server says they were going out, it must be my point. No, it's not your point, you lose the point. If you volley it and you miss the shot, you lose the point. If you volley it and you hit a winner, it's your point. Okay, as in all other types of shots. So, if you hit the ball, even though it would be going out on the volley, and you miss, you lose the point. The second and third misconceptions are to do with the back wall. The first one is to do with, in fact, both of them are quite unlikely, but first one is to do with a serve that would be hit quite hard, normally forehand for right-hand side server. The ball hits the left-hand side of the door, the not in the quarter side, and then bounces in, and then the person says, it was out. The return of server says it was out. It didn't go in the right place. And the simple answer to that is, where's the line? There is no line. There's no line on the back wall because it doesn't matter where it hits on the back wall. As long as it bounces in this quarter, it doesn't matter. As I said at the beginning about the front wall, as long as it hits the front wall, it can hit any combination of side walls and back walls. Yes, it's unlikely, but technically it can. If it bounces, it has to bounce in this quarter. So if it bounces on what seems to be the wrong side, but still comes in here, it's a valid serve. And then the last misconception is kind of like the opposite. It's, imagine somebody hits the ball so hard on their serve, very hard, and it maybe hits the top of the back wall. And then in a very unlikely event, but possible, it bounces out. And when you think about it, that would be kind of a cool serve because it would be moving away. And volleying the ball when it's going towards the front wall is pretty difficult. And I have seen it once or twice. People then say, but it hit the back wall, so it's a legal serve. But just like the idea of the line, there's no line on the back wall. No, it's not. It didn't bounce in this quarter, so it's out. So it doesn't matter whether it hits the back wall or the side wall. If it doesn't bounce here and it's not volleyed, it's not a valid serve. Now, if you have any realities, misconceptions, doubts, questions about the legality of those types of serves or other types of serves, let me know in the comments and I will respond. The following explanation is for right-handed people. Left-handed people, it's the other side. We already know the rule. Got to have one foot in the box. We know that the tee area, this area, which by the way, this is not the tee. The tee area is more dynamic than that. Some situations the tee area will be here, other situations the tee will be here. After you've served, you want to be somewhere here. So my recommendation is that you be starting in the middle. I see quite a lot of people, even professionals sometimes, starting here, and then their movement is backwards, which means if the ball goes to the front, they've got to change momentum. I see some people starting way in the back of the box, and they move forward here. And again, if the ball goes forward, then they're moving forward. If it goes to the back, they have to go back. My feeling is, keep it in the center. Slightly, maybe a little bit further back, keep it in the center. I recommend learning how to serve backhand from the right-hand side. We're going to talk about exact serves in a moment, but if you can learn how to serve backhand, your backhand will be better. Because to serve backhand, you have to have your hand underneath, you have to have a very natural, relaxed swing. Ideally, I'm looking to start somewhere here. As I step forward, the moment of contact, the left foot is in the box. And then even before the ball has passed the short line, I'm on the tee and I'm watching the ball. Meaning I cannot be surprised. There are other benefits to the serving backhand, which we'll talk about in the serves themselves. But for the positioning and the movement, bang, bang, you can see it's a natural flow. Now, a lot of people, they serve forehand, which means they're making contact with the ball closer to the sidewall, and that changes the angle, and that can be a really good thing. But what that means is that there's not a flow to the tee. I'm here, I serve, and yes, I can have some body motion, but you can see that it's not natural. I'm turning my shoulders, or it's not as relaxed. There's no natural about it. But I serve, bang, and I can be on the tee. If you serve a hard serve, sometimes your opponent can step forward and volley the ball, and you're not ready. Now, serving backhand is the most relaxed. Serving forehand can give you some beautifully angled serves, which we'll see in a moment. You have to decide what works for you. But as I said when I first started this part, you should be able to serve backhand. Now, on the other side, for right-handers, there is no thought process. It's literally, you do it the way the backhand was. If I were left-handed, this would be the side. It's just a natural flowing motion. Why wouldn't you want to do that on your backhand? So, that's your positioning, generally in the middle. The moment you make contact with the ball, complete foot in the box, and you're trying to get to the tee before the ball passes the short line, so that if your opponent does volley it, you are ready for it. And of course, don't forget the split step. It will be serve and split step, ready for their return. Okay, so now let's talk about the flight path with regard to the difference between forehand and backhand serve. Now remember, I'm only demonstrating it on this side because that's where it will happen most times. It's very unusual for people to serve backhand from the left side if they're right-handed. Although after you've seen what I'm about to show you, you might change your mind, although I wouldn't recommend it. To summarize, even before we start, serving backhand means that you're making contact closer to the sidewall. And the effect that that has is that the ball is closer to the sidewall for longer. It means that, assuming you don't hit the ball out, the margin of error for a good serve is quite big. Honestly, for a backhand serve, if it hits here, 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 or here, assuming it doesn't come off the back wall, it's still going to be a good serve. The ball will slow down less, though, when it's hit on the backhand, because the touch against the wall is much smaller compared to a forehand, which hits the wall at a different angle. The backhand hits the wall at less angle. Now, the reality is it does seem to make a difference, although maybe that's just me thinking it does. You experiment, you decide. The forehand, in contrast, is hit as far away from the sidewall as possible, in this sidewall, and the angle is greater. And it means that if it does hit early, then it comes at your opponent and that gives them space. If it hits here, then it comes at them and it doesn't give them so much space, and it's definitely going to the back wall. And if you could make it hit here, it gives them no space. But it's easier to hit the ball out on your forehand because the angle is more important. So the margin of error is finer. If you were to hit a perfect forehand serve versus a perfect backhand serve, I would argue that the forehand serve is better. But does the advantage of hitting the perfect serve outweigh the disadvantages of a forehand? The disadvantage, remember, you can't see your opponent as easily, the movement is not as flowing, and you don't practice your backhand. I don't know. Ooh. That was nearly a great serve. Now, I haven't mentioned it at all yet, and I stopped the ball, but look where the ball goes. After it hits the wall, and it wasn't a bad serve, it bounced or it hit the back wall, I can't remember, I'm pretty sure it bounced, and then it hit the back wall, and it was going into the side wall on the other side. And that means that it was a pretty good serve, assuming it didn't go out and assuming it wasn't hitting the wall too early. Because it means that if your opponent doesn't volley the ball, you have to take it in the back. You're forcing them into a difficult situation. And that is the second reason why we have the 93% here, because in the first attempt, it's high, it's difficult, and in the second attempt, it's back at those, against the back wall. And when I say second attempt, I mean, if they decide not to volley it, then they're going to be playing it close to the back wall. Now, some forehands. Now, one thing that I want to mention is that I feel that the forehand is more speed dependent. Because I've got to get the angle just right, I've also got to get the speed just right. Now, that's not to say that the backhand, you can hit the backhand at any speed, but I do feel that because you've got that more margin of error as far as angle is concerned, that gives you more margin of error of how hard you can hit it. Your situation might be different, depending on the court. Perhaps the court is hotter or colder, in which case those things might have more or less effect.
Let's look at some flight paths between forehand and backhand serves. Backhands are yellow, forehands are blue. Here's a backhand. As you can see, it's a lob serve. During the filming of these serves, which was done over 2 or 3 days, I actually hit the cereal box 3 times as many times on my backhand as I did on my forehand. But the forehands, when they worked, were definitely better serves, although I hit a lot more out than on the backhand. And now, a forehand. Again, a lob serve. This was actually a really good serve. Notice that it hits quite far behind the cereal box and it didn't come off the back wall. And now both at the same time. Notice the very different targets on the front wall. Now, different serves from a different angle. Backhand first. And forehand. Lastly, both at the same time. I want to highlight my point about the backhand serve being closer to the side wall for longer than the forehand in this freeze frame. Obviously the backhand serve hit the box, but if it hadn't, you can see that it would have bounced away from the wall less than the forehand serve.
"93% of your serves should hit in the same place." Now, why 93%? No reason at all. Just completely invented it. But it helps you remember, instead of about 90, 93%. 93 serves out of 100 should hit the wall above your opponent's head, because that causes them the most problem. Side wall about where they want to make contact. We know that the side wall causes people problems. We know that it makes them nervous, they hesitate. So if we can get the ball to hit somewhere here, I'm going to use a post-it note. Standing on my tiptoes, I've bent the page so that this is just a simple post-it note. I've bent the page so it's kind of like horizontal. This is where I want 93% of my serves to hit. And I want it to hit there because it will then come at my opponent and then force them into the back corner. Now I'm looking at it, I might even move it a bit further back. I would, because I'm a little bit more adventurous. And the same, of course, for the other side. Now, there are other places, the 7%, But this 93% is the one that will give your opponents the most trouble. For club players, I might drop that down a little bit. I need a margin of error. I don't want to be hitting serves out. We'll talk about that in the tips and tricks. This is where I want the ball to go. How hard do I want to hit it? Hard enough that it goes directly to here, but not hard enough that it would come off the back wall. We don't really want the ball coming off the back wall, because then any benefit we've got from trying to put them in the corner has been lost. It's come out in the middle. So this is where I'm looking to hit it. If I'm starting here, this would be somewhere that would make me nervous. And what do I do when I'm nervous? I don't swing properly. I hesitate. What do I do when I do that? Well, I'm not going to hit it down the line, am I? I'm not going to hit it down the wall. Why? Because it might come back at me. What am I going to do? The returner server is then going to hit 93% of their service returns cross-court, because it means that at least they don't seemingly lose the point straight away. Okay? That's your 93% here. So the 7%, what happens with the rest? Well, the 7% could be a little bit lower. They could be a little bit earlier so that they come directly, especially if you find that your opponent is taking the ball early. You could hit a few here, nothing wrong with doing that. And you could hit a few at their chest. When the ball comes at somebody, especially if they've been thinking that the ball is coming here, when the ball comes at somebody, that can be like a little bit surprising. And any other kind of serve? Occasionally down the middle. Occasionally down the middle. Now, from the right-hand side with a forehand, with a little bit of practice, it is possible to get the right angle. So it comes down the middle, bounces off the back wall, and then comes down here. And it's almost as if they're playing a point from the middle of a rally. And that can negate the opportunity for somebody to hit great volley returns. Because there are some people, especially if they're left-handed, who can smack a nick. Even on their right hand, they can smack the nick, bow. But we don't want them to do that. And how do I stop them from doing that? Well, occasionally serving down the middle, or occasionally serving at them, or occasionally serving here. Now, I have seen people play what's called a hammer serve, which is basically almost like a tennis serve, almost like you're hitting a hammer. They hit the ball hard. They hit it, they make contact high, and they're aiming for it to come down here. But actually, it's not really that effective, so I wouldn't recommend that. Your objective as a server is to find what makes your opponent the most uncomfortable. And for most people, it's this. But not everybody. Other people prefer softer serves. Other people prefer harder serves. Other people hate it when the ball comes down the middle. I love it. I love having a go at some different sorts of shots, but not everybody does. And whilst I want 93% of those serves up there, find out what your opponent hates and try to play some of those.
Here are two serves from Nick Matthew to Cameron Pilley. Notice his 7 bounces and focused preparation before he hits the ball. Notice too how low he makes contact with the ball, probably below the waist. More on that later. Again, in slow motion. The ball appears to hit the sidewall near the PSA TV logo. That's the 93% area. If I had started the clip from here, would you have known it was from a serve? Maybe not. And for the pros, that's all they're trying to do. Stop the returner from getting an advantage. Here's another serve. It could almost be a copy. Consistency of serves is highly underrated. And now from the maestro, and a different angle. I've got some other things to highlight in these two clips. The first one is the foot fault, and as much as I honour and respect Rami, he foot faulted quite a lot. The more important point though is Nick's hesitation and change of mind. He wanted to volley the serve, but decided not to. Here's the foot fault. And here is the hesitation. As with the other clips, the serve stops the returner from attacking and they flow into a standard rally situation. Now, look at Nick's contact point. That's right, it's actually over the half-court line. And it was such a good serve, it got a relatively weak return from Rami. You and I would probably have had to boast. And now, from the other side. Again, the contact point is on the other half. And now we have a much clearer view of the height of contact. Looks to me about knee height. What do you think? I'll talk more about contact height in the tips and tricks chapter. And now we go back 36 years to watch two of the greatest squash players to have ever played, Jahangir Khan and Jhansi Khan. Obviously the quality of the image is much worse, but you can still see the key points. Watch Jahangir's hesitation, just like Nick's. He wanted to volley, but chose not to. And now let's finish with a warning. Never feed your opponent easy serves. If they're good enough, they'll punish you.
The first thing I want to talk about in tips and tricks is your pre-serve ritual. Now, it doesn't have to be some elaborate thing, but you've probably seen the tennis players. They have a very specific way of serving. And there were some players who, in the past, used to roll the ball along in a certain way. Maybe bounce the ball 5 times. But at the very least, what you should be doing is getting yourself in position. Now you know where you should be standing, and you should be pausing. I occasionally like to look at the spot, one particular part on the floor. Some people like to look at a spot on the wall, whatever you want. But the pause, because you don't just want to rush in. You don't just want to, you sort of, pick up the ball and boom. No, of course not. You need to focus your mind. And that pause, those bounces, whatever you choose to do, how you hold the ball. I hold the ball. This is my ritual. And then serve. Doesn't matter if it's forehand or backhand. I'm not talking about the serve. I'm talking about the few moments before. Make it count. Calm your mind. Focus on your game plan. Focus on what you need to do. Forget the score. Score doesn't matter. What matters is what you do. So take that time. Use it. And then serve.
The height you make contact with the ball is important. It affects the type of serve you hit and therefore the target on the front wall. In general, there are 2 positions of contact points, low and high. Here are the low, and as you can see, it's about knee height. This contact point is often used for lob serves. The higher contact point is often used for flat serves, which can mean much less chance of hitting the serve out because the ball almost never goes above the outline. Okay, easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? Now let's turn our attention to the actual flight path of the lob and flat serve, because this is where it matters. Here is the lob serve. Notice the flight path. I'm only demonstrating forehand, but the principle is the same for backhand serves. Here is a flat serve. Again, notice the flight path. And now both at the same time. I apologise for the slight difference in camera angle. The key thing to notice is that the flat serve never really has a chance to go out. With practice, it's possible to hit it so that it never goes above the outline at any point. The lob serve is riskier, but with practice can produce some fantastic serves. For me, the simple deciding factors are the importance of the point. 9-all in the 5th is not the same as 3-all in the 1st. The court temperature. Hotter courts means bouncier balls, which in turn means I might hit more lob serves out. And finally, and probably the most important, the height of the ceiling and or light fittings. High ceilings mean better lob serves. And of course, rally lobs.
Whew. Forgive me for sweating. 42 degrees, don't know if you can see that. No air conditioning, not even any movement. Just moving the cameras around and hitting a few serves, and I'm sweating. Sorry. Back in 2022, I wrote an article about shot combinations. A little bit like boxers might have a jab and then an uppercut. Now, you can see I don't box, but the point still stands that if we have particular combinations in our mind, but we are still aware of other possibilities, then when that chance comes, we can be a little bit more committed. So what does that mean in terms of serve? Well, it means that if you hit a great serve and you can see that your opponent is not going to volley it with confidence, is not going to even volley it, then you might be extra vigilant to wait for the shorter ball, and then you can decide what to do. So what do? Well, probably you take the ball short. Now, before I get any angry letters, angry comments, I don't want to turn the game into a serve, weak return, shot into the tin. I don't want it to be like sort of that tennis idea. But what is the point of hitting a great serve if you're then just going to hit it to the back and keep them in the rally? You have to work them. You have to move them. You have to put them under pressure. And that probably means taking the ball short. And it doesn't mean going this much above the tin. It means going this much above the tin at the right time in the right direction. So that's what I want you to think about. What kind of shot are you going to play after you get a weak return? And of course, it depends where the ball is. But if you've got it in your mind and you know what you're going to do before you even move to the ball, you will be fully committed when you get there. And that is a key point. Too often players get there and then decide. Well, it's better if you can decide most of the time before you even get there, because then you are fully committed. Think about it. Now, let's talk about practice. Now, it's not rocket science, is it? You just got to hit some serves. But there's a couple of things that we're going to talk about. And the first one is balls. Now, if you finish your training session with some serves, and I highly recommend you doing that, we call those things bookends, something that you might do at the beginning, something you might do at the end. It's a mental way of starting and finishing a training session. If you do it at the end of your training session, excuse me, then you can use the standard ball that you were probably using, which is either a red dot or maybe a single yellow. So you can use that ball as long as it's hot. It's possible to even use a white dot, which is technically supposed to be the same as the single yellow, but whatever ball you've got. Now, if you don't do it at the end of a session, perhaps at the beginning of a session, a red dot is perfect. Now, a room temperature red dot is about a warm double yellow, and it recreates the same kind of bounce and everything. So using a red dot can be a great way of doing some serves in the middle, but still getting benefit from a real life situation. So that's the first thing. The second thing is targets. Let's be honest, you're not going to carry a cereal box or your biscuit box around with you. You could, but you're probably not. But we're going to use some of those, or even like a ball box. Post-it notes, however, are easy to put in your bag and easy to carry with you. And what do? You put it on the wall. Now, I always recommend a little bit of masking tape. Doesn't damage the walls, doesn't damage the paint. You should get permission from the court owner first, though, but should be fine. And then, what do? You put your tape on top. You stick it here. I'm reaching up quite high. I bend it, so it's like that, and boom. I have a target. Just behind the service box, pretty high. It's perfect. Now, if you're going to use a box, you put the tape, and this is what you do. Box here. And you put it like this. Now notice it's at an angle and it's going to drop. The moment I do this, it's going to drop. Okay, fine. If you wanted to, you could put a little bit of tape. But that's okay, because I really want it to drop. That is easier than that. Now, if I wanted to, I could just put it straight, but it's a bit harder for me to get my hand up there. Fine. Now, the bigger the box, the easier it is to hit. You want to go a little bit harder? You got your biscuit box. You want to go absolutely stupid crazy? You got a ball box. Now, do I recommend that? Absolutely not. No. Just because you've got like a small box doesn't make it better. You put one of these boxes, you're going to hit like 1 in 500. You put one of those, now I'm not even going to try and guess what you might hit, but if you could hit 1 in 10, that'd be pretty cool. I'd be super happy if I could hit one of those 1 in 10. One in those, 1 in 50, one in those, 1 in 1,000. I don't know. But the point is, having a target really brings home, really makes you understand and feel how accurate your serves are. At the very least, you should be using a post-it note and a piece of tape, or even just a piece of tape. Okay, now I know that this is quite small, and I was saying, don't use the ball box because it's too small, but the reality is that I'd rather you use this than nothing. If you could, one of these. And I've broken the bottom, so every time that I go home, it goes flat. It's not rocket science, is it? But the reality is you're probably not going to do it, but you should. So targets, put targets. And then you can score it. Put the box up, put it in the same place. You've got 25 serves on one side. How many can you hit? Now, not everybody responds well to that, so you'll have to decide whether you do that. But once a month, you could do that. The rest of the time, you use your box, you serve, you don't take a score. Once a month, you do one of those sessions. How many serves can you hit in 25? And keep score. And that sort of gamification can really get you focused on hitting consistent good serves. And then the third thing about practice is games. Okay, so what games can you play to make serving more interesting? Well, the first thing that you can play is you can play 2 serves. Like the old days, back in the old days, you get 2 serves. So the first serve can be that one where you're aiming for the absolute perfect serve. If it goes out, you get another chance. Now, you could limit that. For example, you can say that it can only go out on here. If it goes out the back wall, if it bounces short or short, it doesn't count. That's your serve gone. You get 2 serves if it goes out above the sidewall. And that will help you focus on that. The second thing is that you can play a game where the serve is not allowed to be volleyed. Now, we call these condition games. So these are condition games that you play. You can't volley the serve, which means if you get a beautiful serve that goes into the back corner, you really get the benefit of that. If you hit a hard serve or a bad serve and it bounces, you give your opponent an easy chance. The second thing is you cannot volley the serve unless it comes into the back straight corner. So you can't go for cross-court volley nicks. You can't go for high cross-court widths. You have to return the serve straight if you volley it. Now, the benefit of that is that by making the serve really high and close to the wall, it makes hitting a straight return of serve actually quite difficult. So it benefits the return of server as well, but it's also good for the server. And then the third game I'm going to suggest, or is this the fourth? The next game I'm going to suggest is you get 2 points if the server wins the rally within 3 points. So what I mean by that is the server serves, the returner hits a return, the server then hits a winner. The server gets 2 points for that. Has to go to the other side, so it doesn't stay on the same side. And the attention here, that the idea here is that if you can force a weak return, then you can finish the rally early, and you should be rewarded for that in practice sessions. And all the returner has to do is make sure that their return is good enough that the server can't hit a winner straight away. So those are the games. Those are the different practices. Do them whenever you want to. You can do them before you play serious matches, or you could do them after you play the matches. But what you need to do is you need to think about which ball to use. You need to think about targets, and you need to think about those conditioned games. And it is possible to use a target and a conditioned game, but generally they don't work together.
Phew, 40 minutes. Hope you found it useful. Let me know if you have any doubts, questions, feedback or comments. And remember, do something every single day to improve your squash. See ya.